The last thing we did in the last video was compare date ranges and use the date modification window. In this video, I'd like to first discuss what annotations are. Annotations are a really cool capability that Google gives us. What it is a way for us to make notes to our data so we can keep track of things that are going on in our business which might account for interesting data differences. For instance, maybe we just did a site redesign and we saw a spike in sessions. Or maybe we had a site outage for a day and there's very little data. We can explain those things, but later on when we're reviewing data and maybe comparing recent data with past data, we might forget those anomalies. So Google gives us annotations so we can add in notes. In the example of redesigning our site, we can make a note that says New Site Launch. It also gives us the ability to create checkpoints in time. Using the same example of the site redesign, we can then compare data pre- and post-design to see if the resources that went into launching our new site were worth it. So, Google makes it easy to look back and see important dates and events in the history of our business without having to leave analytics. Let me show you how to use annotations. Beneath the graph is a little tag with a down arrow. When we click on it, it opens our annotations panel. And on the right-hand side is a link that allows us to create new annotations. I'll click on it. The date has been pre-selected, but we can choose our own by clicking on it. And I'll choose a date. And then we would add in our note. And so I'll write in, this is just an example since that's all this is. And then we can choose whether or not we want to keep this private, meaning only I can see it, or make it shared so that everyone who I've given permission to see this report can also view the annotation. I'll keep it private. And then we click Save. Now, you'll notice under September 30th, which is a way over here to the right, there's a little bubble located beneath the date. If we click on it, it will open up the annotation panel down below. Let me choose the panel so you can see what I mean. Okay, got it? We can also edit the annotation by choosing Edit in the right-hand side of the panel. Google also allows us to star the annotation over here to the right if we want to call particular attention to particular dates. Then we can even filter the annotations by starred or all as well. So as you can see, it's very simple to create annotations, and I highly recommend that you use them because I can guarantee there will be anomalies with your data caused by events that you'll be aware of. And you want to make sure that you write them down because you will not remember them months or years from now. And if you don't, it may make explaining data differences very difficult or impossible because you'll just be guessing. Use them as a logbook for all your marketing and design actions. Maybe you began an AdWords campaign today, or created new marketing goals, or new landing pages. Writing them down can help you explain increased or decreases in conversions. And if you have multiple people working in your analytics dashboard, it helps you keep everything organized and everybody can be on the same page. Start using annotations right away to get yourself into the habit. Okay. So now that we've looked at configuring our dates and using annotations, the next thing I want to talk about is interacting with the graphs that you'll see in Google Analytics. As you can see, we're still working in our location report. I'm going to turn off the comparison just so we can start with a more basic view. So, in the center of the screen, we have a line chart, and this shows us my sessions over the time period I selected. Remember, sessions are visits to my website. We know it's sessions because we see it in the drop-down box in the top left right above the graph. Also, there's a label above the graph right below the drop-down. So what are we looking at? The first thing is the graph is going to display data from the metric we've selected. In this case, we've chosen sessions. And we can change this if we want by selecting into the drop-down here and making a different selection. As you can see, there are many options to choose from. I'll choose percentage of new sessions, and the graph changes to account for the new metric that we want to look at. Also, as a reminder, if we hover over any point on the graph, it will show us the actual data from the day selected. In the upper right-hand corner of the graph, we can change our time view. This is useful for looking at data over longer or shorter spans. For instance, now we're looking at the day view. This means that over the time period we have selected, which is 1 month, every data point on the graph is equal to 1 day. We can change that to 1 week if we like by selecting week. And now each data point is for an entire week. And we can also change it to month. This isn't really relevant for the time period we have selected. However, if we're looking at a year's worth of data, the month view is very helpful. It just depends on how long of a time period you want to look at. Google gives us a wide variety of options so that we can adjust our perspective accordingly. I'll go back to day view since I prefer this view when looking at a month's worth of data. The next thing I want to look at is the different graph types. In the right corner above the graph, we have the graph type icons. And as you know, we're currently looking at a line graph, but we can change it to what's known as a motion chart. And I'll select that now. The motion chart is pretty unique. What it does is allows us to look at each data point. And remember, we're looking at percentage of new sessions, but the dimension we're looking at is location, specifically country. So every colored ball represents a different country. And if we hover over them, we can see which country is which. So what this graph does is shows us through movement how the data changes as we move through time. Right now, the data is expressed for 1 day, September 1st. And you can see that right below the graph next to the little play button. If we select and move the cursor through time day by day, we can see how the data changes. See that? Also, if we choose to select the play button, it will automate the move through time. You may notice that the data points move not just vertically, but horizontally. And the reason for this is we're not just looking at one metric. We have percentage of new sessions as the metric at the top of the page. And this is the vertical movement, the vertical axis. But if you look below the graph, we have another metric involved. This one is sessions, and it's the horizontal axis. So as we're moving through time, we're seeing each data point, in this case, sessions per location on the horizontal axis, and percentage of new sessions per location on the vertical axis. Make sense? We can also change the data. We could choose to make this graph less complicated by choosing sessions for both, or we could compare any number of metrics. We can also select the different countries here on the right-hand side, and it will add in the name tag of the country selected. Or we could deselect them all. We can even change some variables like the color and the size in this drop-down here. Beneath the graph, in the right corner is a little wrench. If you select it, we get some options, like we can change the opacity of the information. Then we can also change the type of graph we're looking at here at the top. We can change it to a bar graph, which will also move through time if we hit play. Then there's a very complicated line graph, which doesn't really work with the data we have selected, but once again, Google does a great job giving us view options so we can digest the information however is most comfortable for us. And that's how to interact with the different views. So let's go back to the line graph again. And I want to change back to sessions. So not only can we look at one metric here, we can also compare two types of metrics. I've got sessions highlighted, but we can choose a second metric from the drop-down to the right of it. We can even search for the type of metric we want to compare by using the search bar at the top. I'll choose bounces. And here it is, so I'll select it. And see how the graph changes to include the separate metric? We also have a little key under the metric name to remind us which one is which, just in case we forget. In this case, the dark blue is sessions, and the light blue is the bounce rate. Now, sessions is an addition type metric, so it's whole numbers. And we can see on the graph on the left-hand side, there's 25 and 50. These are the landmarks for sessions. On the right-hand side, we can see 50% and 100%, and these are the benchmarks for the bounce rate. Also, if we hover over a particular day, we can see the data callout, and this shows us the exact sessions number and bounce rate percentage on the particular day that we've selected. Now, it's interesting to me that our bounce rate is kind of all over the place. Remember, bounce rate is the percentage of people that only visit one website page before leaving our website. Whether there is any correlation to the amount of sessions we have per day is something to investigate. We can go ahead and pull in a different comparison metric if we like. For instance, new users. So I'll just select the second dropdown and start typing new users into the search bar. And then I'll select new users. And this is pretty cool. We can see that a pretty good percentage of our website traffic is new users. So that means our site is good at attracting new people. Then, if we want to remove a comparison metric, just select the X icon next to it. And now the graph has just one metric. So that's pretty much it with annotations and graphs. Make sure you're exploring the graph view in reports, and remember, the data metrics you can bring in will differ depending on the report that you're viewing. In this one, we're looking at locations, specifically countries, so the metric is sessions in each country. Use the line graph view to see total sessions per time period, and use the movement graph view to see sessions per country per time view.